And you're live.
Good evening. Welcome to the council meeting of January 25th, 2021. On behalf of council staff, I would like to extend best wishes to our Scottish community on this Robbie Burns Day. It also gives me great pleasure on behalf of council and staff to welcome our new CAO, Dan Trolk. This meeting is being conducted on Zoom in observance of COVID-19 protocols and is being live streamed on Facebook Live. Town Hall is closed to the public, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. The public may send questions directly to the recording secretary's email at jwest@kentville.ca. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages?
Yeah.
Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated?
No.
I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. We will be voting by poll for all votes except administrative. The chair will call your name and ask how say you. This method permits us to verbally record your vote. Are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences? CAO Smith, could you please take the roll call?
Thank you, Your Worship. This evening we have all members of council present. We also have two CAOs, and you've mentioned we have our new CAO. I'll be filling in for him at the beginning and a good part of the old business part of the meeting because of my knowledge of the files involved. And we also have, of course, our staff support, Jennifer West and Jason Bethune, and we have Director Bedingfield listening in as well because there's an active transportation plan item later in the agenda that she's very interested in. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO, we have been provided with a proposed agenda. Do you have anything to add to that agenda?
Your Worship, no, we have nothing more to add to this evening's agenda.
Thank you. Are there any further additions or deletions to the agenda? If I could have a motion to accept the agenda, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor York, thank you. All those in favor of accepting the agenda? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to approval of the minutes. We have several sets of minutes. The first set is from the November 30th, 2020 council meeting, have been distributed for approval. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, they will be annotated by the recording secretary in red and will be added to the electronic meeting file. Any changes? None? All right, moving on. The other set of minutes that you have is a set of minutes from our December 14th special council meeting. If there are no changes, they are approved. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate them. No changes, moving on. You have before you the minutes of December 22nd, 2020 special council meeting have been distributed for approval. If there are no changes, they will be approved as distributed. If there are changes, they will be annotated. No changes, all right, moving on. And the last set of minutes that you have is from the January the 11th, 2021 special council meeting. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved. If there are changes, they will be annotated. No changes, moving on, thank you. All right, we do have old business or business arising from previous minutes. And the first item that we have is second reading of the special events bylaw revision for COVID-19. You will recall that we, Councillor or Deputy Mayor, yes, your hand is up.
My apologies. I should have declared a conflict on this item, Your Worship.
Okay, so you've declared a conflict at 6:06. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if we were in chambers, you would just come off of the gallery and go down into the audience. So if you could just shut off your video, you can keep your audio on, but just your video, please. Thank you. So we have second reading for the special events bylaw revision. You will recall that we received a letter from the owners of the property back in May of 2020. And at the time, not knowing where COVID was going or what the commerce world would be like, they were requesting an additional 5 events be transferred over to 2021. So the recommendation, we had first reading of the resolution of special events amending events bylaw to carry over 5 events from 2020 to 2021 was approved at the 30th of November 2020 council meeting. After consideration of the resolution and correspondence received from council is prepared to move forward on second reading. So we have a motion that council approves second reading of the resolution of the special events COVID-19 amending the special events bylaw to carry over 5 events from 2020 to 2021. If I could have someone move that, please. Councillor Gerard, thank you. And Councillor York, I will take your hand as the second, please. Thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that council approves second reading of the resolution and special events COVID-19 amending the special events bylaw to carry over 5 events from 2020 to 2021. Is there any discussion on this matter? Yes, CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one thing I noted I didn't include in the background. Council in its earlier iteration back sometime in the summer did approve, and I believe they advised the owners that they did approve the 5 additional events. What they didn't do at that time, of course, was start the process for the bylaw revision. That was to follow, and that's what's coming along here. But I just wanted to be clear that it had been advised to the owners that this 5 additional events was acceptable because of a COVID situation.
Do you have the date on that activity, CAO?
No, I don't. I can try to look it up if there's discussion.
No, that's fine. We've got some hands up and see what rolls out. Councillor Gerard, hand up first.
Thank you, Worship. I'm still. This has been a touchy subject. As we've all said, it's a beautiful property. It's a beautiful venue. It's absolutely in the wrong spot. And not that this falls on staff or anybody else, but I don't think we've come up with a satisfactory solution. I don't think saying no outright is the answer, but I don't think that letting them go on still with the complaints of the noise and the traffic and everything else are happening. So I don't know what the answer is on this. The other thing is I had a few people, business owners in town say, you know, if you're willing to do this for one business because of COVID, what are you willing to do if others, you know, sort of come to council and ask? And I guess that from business owners around town is a valid question. I can't think of any situation where other businesses would need help, but I can certainly think of a situation other businesses would need help. I can't think anything that the town would be able to do. Anyways, as I said, it's a touchy subject, and I don't know whether this is a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. First, I have a couple of things. First, on the page 19 of that May 25th, 2020 minutes, we have a typo there that I don't think anybody noticed. And it says recommendation to council moved by Councillor Kate Savage and seconded by Councillor John Pulsifer. I don't think there was a marriage there or anything. So I think that should probably be changed in the interest of being exact. First of all, it is a tough situation, but I think back when council first looked at this, we were trying to do our due diligence with COVID. And at that time, there was nothing to guide us at all. Since that time, the federal government has come out with all kinds of programs for business owners to tap into to help with their businesses. And I'm not even sure that maybe the provincial government hasn't done something, but you know, there's avenues came out for people to recoup some of their losses through government programs. And we didn't know about that when this first came to council. And so I think that's something that we need to look at and we need to consider. I think what we did do as a municipality was we extended taxation deadlines, and you know, that was what we did for businesses and for residential, and you know, I think that was a good thing that we did. I also need to take a look at the fact that, like every other business owner in town, Healy Events also made some adjustments and adapted their business to try and recoup some of the losses. And they had some events, you know, through the summer, some ones that weren't, you know, the usual wedding events. They had some different events. And so at this point in time, you know, I'm not very supportive of this going any further. I also believe very strongly in our MPS and our zoning, and that zoning is residential. It is not commercial, and so, you know, I'm leaning very strongly against what we might have looked at in the first place, which is granting those 5. And those are the reasons that I would do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a little bit of clarity, I guess, maybe from CAO Smith. So the previous council as a group approved the 5 extra, and then it came before us again, I guess, to finish it up in the fall, but we had discussion on it several times. And I think back in November with CAC, we voted this down, right?
Not this one.
No, Councillor, remember there were 2 motions.
I know there were
2
two,
bylaw
but-
changes.
Right.
One
There
on
were
a
2.
go forward, sorry.
Yeah, no, there were 2. I'm aware of that, but we discussed this though. If we go back, I know we did.
You certainly had discussion, yes, but it wasn't voted down. No, it was moved forward as far as I understand. I'm not sure we didn't do those minutes this evening.
Yeah, we have those minutes right here.
But I like my co-councilors. I mean, every business has suffered because of COVID. So I mean, that would be like another business in town coming and saying, I want to break on my taxes because you were able to do this for this property. So again, I can't support that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just get a bit of clarification? When this was originally approved, was that was communicated already to the business owners that they were approved for 5 additional 2021 dates?
That's my understanding. It was done in a public session. It wasn't
Okay.
in a private
So
session.
my concern.
My understanding here is that we approved the concept of using public space to increase commercial space, but we did not give a yes to those 5, a definitive yes. That's why it's still with us.
Okay, I just wanted a bit of clarification on that, just in case that they had communicated that to the 5 contracts that would have been lost. Is my concern is that we've said, or there would have been the miscommunication that perhaps yes, and then that got communicated to
Shouldn't have been.
the contract. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Maxwell, did you have something else?
Oh, sorry, no, I didn't lower.
Okay, no, very good. So as folks have stated, we did look at this back in May when we received the letter, and we did talk about what we could do, and approving the amendment from a bylaw perspective. But it was lost in the shuffle, I guess, so to speak. And what we've actually seen happen since May, which is something that we could not have imagined at the time, was that the Atlantic bubble opened on the 3rd of July. And you will recall that, that permitted quite a bit of movement in our area, and gathering limits were shifted upwards. If we look at the 3rd of July, which was a Friday, there were actually 18 Saturdays in the summer months in which events could have been held. So they have been able to hold 2 weddings and 8 different classes at the venue. And as many of you have already stated, we have not done anything special for any of our other commercial tenants in the town of Kentville. And we have tried to be very fair and very equitable in the way that we bring things forward. So if there's no further discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve second reading of the resolution and special events COVID-19, amending the special events bylaw to carry over 5 events from 2020 to 2021 due to the COVID-19. Councillor Gerard, how say you?
No.
Councillor Huntley?
No.
Councillor Maxwell?
No.
Councillor York?
No.
Councillor Zabian?
No.
I say no, the motion is carried. Thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you. You're returning and the time is 6:18. All right, our second bylaw on the books for this evening is second reading of, oh, sorry, the motion is defeated. It was not carried. The motion is defeated. I have a hard time with that one. Did anybody want to change their vote? Because you could, since I said the wrong thing, but the motion is defeated. The next one we have is second reading of the Valley Waste Bylaw with a recommendation. First reading of the Valley Waste Bylaw was carried out on November 30th, 2020. The existing bylaw, Chapter 92, should be repealed upon adoption date of the draft bylaw. So we have a motion that council gives second reading to the proposed Valley Waste Bylaw, and further that the existing bylaw, Chapter 92, be repealed on adoption date of the draft bylaw. If someone could move that, please.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, thank you. My seconder, Councillor Maxwell, did I see your hand? Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approves second reading of the proposed Valley Waste Bylaw, and further that the existing bylaw, Chapter 92, be repealed on adoption date of the draft bylaw. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to approve second reading of the proposed Valley Waste Bylaw, and further that existing bylaw, Chapter 92, be repealed on the adoption date of the draft bylaw. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
I say yes, this motion is carried. All right, we're moving on to our new year and our first set of recommendations and reports. This evening, we are actually seeing recommendations arising from 2 CAC meetings. The first one on December 14th and the second one on January 11th. And one of our new councillors is stepping up and will present and move them. Councillor Huntley, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first one that I want to talk about is the withdrawal of funds from town capital equipment reserve. At the December 14th meeting of the CAC, Director Krell presented her report requesting a withdrawal of $73,000 for the purchase of trucks earlier in the year. Council Advisory Committee recommends that Council approve the withdrawal of $73,000 from the town's capital equipment reserve to fund 2020-2021 transportation equipment acquisitions. So moved.
Thank you. A seconder, please.
Second.
Councillor Gerard, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the withdrawal of $73,000 from the town's capital equipment reserve to fund 2020-2021 transportation equipment acquisitions. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is to recommend approval, or is to approve the withdrawal of $73,000 from the town's capital equipment reserve to fund the 2020-2021 transportation equipment acquisitions. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. Councillor Huntley?
Thank you. The second one is the withdrawal of funds from Town Capital Reserve number 1. And at the December 14th meeting of our CAC, Director Krall presented her report requesting a withdrawal of $207,396.16 from the town's Capital Reserve Fund for a number of projects in administration, protective services, transportation, recreation, and economic development. The CAC committee recommends that council approve the withdrawal of $207,396.16 from the following reserves. The Town of Kentville Capital Reserve, the general allocation, which is $200,960.01. And next, the Town of Kentville Capital Reserve Recreation, which is $6,436.15, to partially fund capital acquisitions during the year of 2020 to 2021. So moved.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder, please. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the withdrawal of $207,396.16 to town council from the following reserves. Town of Kentville Capital Reserve, general allocation, $200,960.01. Town of Kentville Capital Reserve Recreation, $6,436.15. And these transfers will partially fund several capital acquisitions during the year 2020-2021. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is to approve the withdrawal of $207,396.16 from the following reserves. Town of Kentville Capital Reserve, general allocation, $200,960.01. Town of Kentville Capital Reserve Recreation, $6,436.15. These transfers will partially fund several capital acquisitions during the year 2020-2021. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
I say yes, the motion is carried. Thank you. Moving on.
Thank you. The next one is the Regional Climate Action Plan. And at our December 14th, 2020 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Smith reviewed the staff report, which describes the development of the Kings County Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Working Group, which asks Council to participate in the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners in Climate Protection Project as the first step towards a regional climate action plan. Council Advisory Committee recommends for approval that Council adopt and sign the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Joining Resolution for Partners for Climate Protection Program. So moved.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Council adopt and sign the FCM Joining Resolution for Partners for Climate Progress Program. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that Council adopt and sign the FCM Joining Resolution for Partners for Climate Progress Program. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Oh, CAO?
Sorry, I didn't catch a second, and I'm not terribly quick, but I didn't hear a second.
Councillor Zabian? Counselor Huntley, how say
Yes.
you?
Yes.
Counselor Maxwell,
Yes.
Counselor York,
Yes.
Counselor Zabian,
Yes.
and I say yes, the motion is carried. Counselor Huntley?
Okay, the next part of that one is the Council Advisory Committee recommend that council pre-approve a $5,000 line item in the 2021-2022 budget. Kentville's share in support of the SCM Partners for Climate Protection Program, $60,000 grant to council at the January 25th, 2021 meeting of council. So moved.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder for that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council pre-approve a $5,000 line item in the 2021-2022 budget. Kentville share in support of the FCM Partners for Climate Progress Program $60,000 grant. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council pre-approve a $5,000 line item in the 2021-2022 budget. Kentville share in support of the FCM Partners for Climate Progress Program $60,000 grant. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
I say yes, this motion is carried.
Thank you. The next is the first reading of the noise bylaw revision. At our January 11th meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Smith reviewed the purpose of the bylaw, which is to better define and control unwanted noise within town limits. Revisions to this bylaw should be changed to improve the application process for an exemption to this bylaw. Council Advisory Committee recommend that council approve the suggested changes to bylaw chapter 104, noise bylaw as presented, and give first reading to the bylaw on January 25th, 2021 meeting of council, and giving second reading to the bylaw on February 22nd, 2021.
Thank
So moved.
you.
You're welcome.
Do I have a seconder for this motion, please? Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the suggested changes to bylaw 104 noise bylaw as presented and provide first reading this evening and giving second reading on the bylaw on February 22nd, 2021. Is there any discussion? Councillor Gerard, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Worship. Question for CAO Smith. I think we all received some sort of communication from some folks in the new apartment building on the east end of town regarding the exemption and the noise and stuff like that. The exemption to this new bylaw. So if someone applies for an exemption, what's the protocol, or is it just if you apply, you're going to get it?
Sorry, just getting myself unmuted. No, I think there are a group of us in the office, including we consult with the police service, but we also, of course, talk with people like Bev and myself in terms of people who've had experience with noise bylaws before. I did have experience when I was in Wolfville, and determine whether it's reasonable in the case of the Miners Landing one, as we advised council and advised others. It was unfortunate, but it's weather related. It's a question of getting the floors completed on time. The latest example was one where fortunately the building now has windows and a roof, so it attenuates the noise somehow, but it was a difficult choice. We thought about it, but it did seem to be a reasonable exemption. If somebody had called to hold a rock and roll concert that evening at the same location, we probably would have said no. Not because we're old, but we probably would have said no. But in this case, there was a business reason, and that's certainly my experience from both HRM and from Wolfville, that occasionally there are construction and other requirements, but it isn't a rubber stamp, I assure you.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious as to whether we have the actual equipment yet, the decibel reader, or is that in transit? Thank you.
I think I can respond to that because what we have done is consulted with other municipalities in Nova Scotia who are using the noise bylaws, and we haven't found a lot of meters around. The bylaws are normally part of an overall response in terms of bylaw enforcement. And just as we have other bylaws unsightly, not unsightly, but sorry, we have other bylaws that our officer is enforcing, it is not always necessary to go to the full extent. It could be that we need a decibel meter at some time, but no, we don't actually have one in our pocket right now.
Is there any further discussion? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm gonna backtrack because I wasn't on council then. So the bylaws were made for the noise, but there's no decibel meter now. Is that what I just heard you say, CAO Smith?
Yes, yes. And what I'm saying is what we did in preparing the bylaws was look for other municipalities in Nova Scotia that have them. And there's a
Okay.
lot to do. The model that I used when I drafted this bylaw was Wolfville, because I've used it there. But again, in following up with them to say, okay, folks, what's your decibel meter? Most of them are saying, well, it's part of an overall bylaw response. When in Wolfville, it happens to be the RCMP, when they go into an event in town, there may be charges for different things under bylaws and so forth, and they haven't found the need for the decibel meter. In Kentville's case, that may be a requirement and they'll have to get something, but that's all really in the staff implementation of the bylaw. It shouldn't really be a policy concern for you how we do it, but we will obviously have to go to that extent if somebody challenges us on specific decibel readings.
There's really no way to pinpoint right now. If a neighbor called and complained about a neighbor or whatever, there's really no way to do anything about it. Police can go, obviously.
With
but I mean,
respect, there's ways to do a lot of things about it simply by showing up and showing that we have received a complaint, and we will go further to address the complaint if that's required. So there are quite a package of tools that our existing bylaw officer uses for parking control for all sorts of issues that we use. It's not a case of slam dunk, you go to the full extent of the bylaw right at the start.
no, it just seemed like a lot of conversation around it at that point. I thought at that time they bought one because they'd given a price on it, and I thought it was purchased, and I'm just a little confused there.
Well,
But anyway.
as I say, this actually is a piece of municipal legislation that I picked up after arriving here. There was a draft, and the draft had been completed by the previous CAO, and then through transition, it wasn't moving forward. So picked it up and got it done. But as I say, then we went to the step of saying, we've got it now, let's check around and see what people are using. And they came back with the conversation that I just gave you, that they don't necessarily rely on a decibel meter at the start of the issue. It's a question of, it's after 10 o'clock at night, they don't expect to have a noise level that you might have before 10 o'clock at night. And that's kind of the starting point of the conversation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the suggested changes to bylaw 104 noise bylaw as presented and provide first reading this evening and giving second reading to the bylaw on February 22nd, 2021. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. Moving on.
Thank you. The next is the Long Service Award Policy Revision. At our January 11th CAC meeting, CAO Smith reviewed the purpose of this policy, which is to celebrate the service of councillors and staff. This proposed revision will remove elected officials from this policy. So the CAC committee recommend that council approve the suggested changes to policies G39, council and staff long service awards, as presented. So moved.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder for that, Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the suggested changes to policy G39, council and staff long service awards as presented. Is there any discussion on this matter? And it should be noted for our new councillors that the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities does celebrate the long service of members of council, elected officials, and that's typically done at the annual conference, which is typically held in the month of November. Was not held in November of 2020, and hopefully we're at a point in November of 2021 where we can all gather again and celebrate. So is there any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the suggested changes to policy G39, council and staff long service awards as presented. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. Thank you.
The next one we have is the Municipal Energy Learning Group recommendations to the province. At our January 11th meeting of the CAC, CAO Smith reviewed the report on the Municipal Energy Leaders Group, the MELG, and gave a review of the recommendations being forwarded to the province. Council has reviewed the 14 issues in this report and supports them in principle. CAC recommend that Council support in principle the 14 Quest recommendations from the Municipal Leaders Group to the provincial government around climate action in Nova Scotia in the attached policy brief dated July 10th, 2020. And further, that these recommendations are included in policy and decision-making for the town of Kentville where appropriate. And further, that council follow up with a letter of support to the province. So moved.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council support in principle the 14 Quest recommendations from the Municipal Leaders Group to the provincial government around climate change in Nova Scotia in the attached policy brief dated July 10th, 2020, and further that these recommendations are included in policy and decision-making for the town of Kentville where appropriate, and further that council follow up with a letter of support to the province. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council support in principle the 14 Quest recommendations from the Municipal Leaders Group to the provincial government around climate action in Nova Scotia in the attached policy brief dated July 10th, 2020. And further, that these recommendations are included in policy and decisions making for the town of Kentville where appropriate. And further, that council follow up with a letter of support to the province. Deputy Mayor, how say you? Sorry. I just noticed you changed spots. You were.
That's okay. No, it's okay. It's no worries. Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make a comment with regards to the 14 recommendations or policy recommendations through Quest. And this is based on some recent conversations. And number 9 there talks about, allowing municipalities to lend to private businesses and PACE financing to be expanded. And the fact around municipalities don't know that this is an option and PACE financing options need to be clarified. So I think, we've talked about that before in our council and we did not partake in the PACE program. So I'm just wondering, based on some recent conversations, if that's something that will come back to the table again. Thank you.
Your Worship, I guess I would refer that to the incoming CEO to have another look at it. At this point, what this report is suggesting is a number of improvements the province can make. We expect them to come out with a piece of legislation or regulation. So these are recommendations from quite a broad group of municipalities. It is not just Kentville centric. And I did notice the words PACE in there, and I do know something of the history, but it may be something you direct the new CAO to have a fresh look at.
Okay, thank you.
CAO Trolk, did you wish to make any comment?
I just would follow up from the comments made by CAO Smith that I think it would be a deeper conversation that we should have in the future around this and see if it's appropriate for the town of Kentville to be pursuing that or not.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion?
My answer is yes.
I think we will be having a lot of conversations about climate change and how we can put our stamp on it, so to speak. If there are no further discussions, are you ready for the question? The question is that council give support in principle to the 14 Quest recommendations from the municipal leaders group to the provincial government around climate action in Nova Scotia in the attached policy brief dated July 10th, 2020. And further, that these recommendations are included in policy and decision-making for the town of Kentville where appropriate. And further, that council follow up with a letter of support to the province. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell? Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, motion is carried. I think a new feature that that we've got with Zoom is that when you put your hand up, your block moves positions. It's freaking me out here, I'm going to tell you. All right, Councillor Huntley, back over to you.
Thank you. Our next one is the Catalyst Consulting request, public participation. At the January 11th, 2021 meeting of our Council Advisory Committee, Director Gentleman reviewed the staff report, which describes a rezoning application. The area of concern is at the southwest corner of Park Street and Shyla Drive near the Kentville Business Park. The request is a concurrent amendment of the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw, which would change the future land use designation from commercial to residential and highway commercial to residential high density R4 for 3 acres in this area. Also during this meeting, Andrew Amos and Jason White from Catalyst Consulting, they gave a presentation about the aging population in Nova Scotia and the opportunity for providing senior housing in Kentville at the proposed location. Council Advisory Committee recommend that CAC directs staff to conduct a public participation meeting about this proposal and report back to council for their consideration in terms of the request for an amendment to the municipal planning strategy and the land use bylaw. So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Gerard, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council directs staff to conduct a public participation meeting about this proposal and report back to council for their consideration in terms of the request for an amendment to the MPS and LUB. CAO Smith, I know you have something to add to this file, so before we go much further, if you could fill us in, please.
I do, Your Worship. To be fair, I see that Solicitor Mattard has joined us, and we may have to consult back and forth here if he's in earshot. I just want to check that he's out there. He's obviously going to join us soon, so if I don't hear from him after I speak a little bit, I may suggest we defer this for a few moments until he is with us. What I'm looking at here in front of me is an email from Catalyst Consulting, actually from Zap, the architecture and planning folks advising them. And they're talking about changing their request to rezoning from C2 to C1 and amending section 6.24 of the land use bylaw. So our suspicion is that they no longer wish to proceed with what they had intended to. But I have to say, this came in at 2:18 today, and I'm a little unsure as to whether to keep the oar in the water for the public participation meeting and have that approved. We don't have to necessarily move forward, but that's where Jeff may be able to advise. I don't know whether he's there now or not.
Solicitor Matart?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Do
And
I
your
sound
voice is
like,
good.
do I sound okay?
Yes.
Okay, for
sound-
some reason my video's not working. I was just sending an email to Jason. Perhaps it's one of the new Zoom features. So I don't have anything else to add to what Mr. Smith said. I understood that the intent was that they were withdrawing, and if they have withdrawn, then there's nothing to move forward with. And so I would not think that this need come forward today. And perhaps the best thing would be, Your Worship, to table it to the next meeting, and that would give time to determine what's happening.
Thank you, Jeff. I would agree with that advice, Your Worship. I think the best thing is to table it for now. And I apologize, but as I say, the information came in at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and we haven't been able to go back to them and say, so this means you're withdrawing. They have told us what they wish to do. They haven't told us what they do not wish to do. And it would be normal in these circumstances for us to clarify that. We will do so as quickly as possible, let council know. But in the meantime, let's table this one if you don't mind. I hate to disappoint Councillor Huntley, who's doing so well at moving these forward.
Okay, thank you. Before we do anything, we still have a motion on the floor, and Councillor Gerard, your hand is up.
Yeah, I guess it would make sense that they change what they want to zone it to, because at our last meeting, when Andrew spoke, and when Bev said this zoning doesn't give them what they want, they said they weren't told that. But I guess my question is, in regards to the public participation, would not that happen if so we're going to table this today, but if they come back and say, we want to move forward, this is the zoning, it's the same thing we wanted to do, would not a public participation happen, or a public hearing happen anyways if we went to, so this is just delaying it further, correct?
Those are two different things. So a public
Yeah.
participation is giving the public the opportunity to hear an idea. A public hearing is when the public comes before us as a council to present their opinions. So it's two very different things, because in the public participation, it's not a hearing, so they're not speaking to us as a council. They're actually speaking to staff, and we may be present, but we are in information gathering, but we're not in decision making from a public hearing perspective, if that makes sense to you. So they are two very different things.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the interest of time, and I get from their previous presentation that they want to get moving on this fairly quickly. Would it be, and I understand deferring it at this evening's meeting, but would it be in order to perhaps hold a special council meeting once we clarify the request to go from C2 to C1? Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Worship,
Certainly.
since you can't see me, for which I apologize, so this will, if this proceeds, as I understand the things, it will be a land use bylaw amendment and not a municipal planning strategy amendment. And so it will come forward differently, and staff will need to stick handle that and bring it to council. But it will be it's a very different application than what council's currently faced with. So I don't think that you can really prejudge how it might come forward and what exactly that will look like.
So Solicitor Matart, the public participation, that can be had at any time.
There won't be a public participation. There will just be a public hearing.
Okay. Okay, so the process is actually slimmed down.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maxwell, you have your hand up.
Thank you, thank you. I just, yeah, I was just concerned about the public participation. So since we're not going to have one, I'm not as concerned about that. But I do agree, we definitely need an awful lot more information to make any kind of decision. And I think tabling it is the right way to go here.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to you, Solicitor Matart, with regards to public participation. This motion becomes moot and does not have to be tabled because if they are going from a C2 to a C1, as you said, this is purely a land use bylaw and the process is different. So it behooves us to actually defeat this motion, and that way it cleans it up for staff and they're not hung out with anything that no leftovers on the table, so to speak. And we start with a clean slate. Does that make sense?
Well, my understanding is that it's staff aren't crystal clear as to how the applicant wants to move forward. So if the applicant withdraws their application, then council won't even consider the motion. So there will be the recommendation from CAC simply will not come before council because there will not be an application to consider any longer. But my understanding from what Mr. Smith has said is that the status of the application is unclear. Whether they've indicated that they're going to bring an application forward to amend the zoning, but that's not the same as saying that they've abandoned the current application. It's likely that they've abandoned the current application, but they may not have. Is that fair, Mr. Smith?
That is fair. As I say, the communication came in at 2 o'clock this morning while we were busy doing other things. And so we don't know for sure. I guess, Your Worship, you're looking for whether we can table it. I do believe that tabling it buys you space and time to allow us to come back and let you know whether there's any need to proceed with that or just withdraw because the matter is mute.
I guess I understand that, but it's just having all these things hanging around, and you know it's much nicer to have a tidy application. And as we heard from the applicant at our last meeting, they felt that they had not had all of the information. So are we just putting more, I guess, more roadblocks in the way by tabling this? Whereas if we defeated this motion based on the fact that they're no longer proceeding as they have said, then that cleans it up, because right now the ads are out. And how do we take the ads back with a tabled motion when in reality the motion is not dead? It's just holding in a holding pattern. So you know, we have all these ads out on Facebook and a variety of other things. So would it not be a better way to proceed to defeat this motion and have it clean, or keep it on the books because the ad's already out there? People have already got it in their calendar.
Yeah, those ads are staff driven. The staff can communicate just as easily that the matter's canceled. So in the same way that they've advertised the public participation meeting, they can advertise that the public participation meeting has been canceled because the application was withdrawn. So the challenge is that you don't want to, I would suggest you don't want to dismiss, sorry, you don't want to defeat the motion because you're not certain that that's what the applicant wants. Maybe they want this to continue forward until they've finished investigating or doing whatever they want with the change to the zoning. The applicant has professional planners, as I understand it, that to advise them on these issues. And this is simply a timing issue. This will not slow them down. So let me be clear.
Okay.
There's nothing about what Mr. Smith and I are suggesting that will slow the process down. It just keeps this option open in case the applicant wants it to proceed. If they don't want it to proceed, then it won't. But if they do, it's still there. You haven't defeated it and have to start all over again.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Zabian, you have your hand up.
Your worship, Brian, CAO Smith, could you forward us the correspondence from today when you get a chance?
Yes, I don't see any reason why we couldn't forward the communication from the company, you mean?
Right. So, but
Yeah.
between the
As I
last,
say, we haven't had time, as far as I know, we haven't responded to them yet because it just came in this afternoon and we were working on a couple of other transactions this afternoon.
and are you aware since the last CAC and today, was there any correspondence, between them and town staff, or are you aware of any?
I believe there's been correspondence back and forth. Yes, but normally we wouldn't copy council on every piece of correspondence on a file.
Right.
It's operational.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can just chime in here, planning matters are one of the more important things that council deals with. And I'd encourage council to simply be patient and let the process take its course. It's very important that councillors not be seen to prejudge anything on a planning matter. And it's much safer for the process, and it's very important for process from the applicant's perspective that everything happens correctly. It's much safer for the process and for the applicants for council to simply await the staff report that accompanies a rezoning request and get all the information at that time. That ensures that you all have the same information. You're making the decisions on that information and that it's not coming to you piecemeal. The public will get to see the same information. There's nothing special that you get to see that the public doesn't get to see. And that will all come forward in due course in the planning director's report to council.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is to Solicitor Matert and CAO Smith. If we continue to put the public participation motion to a vote and it passes or fails, and they change their mind in the meantime, doesn't this just drop off the face of the earth? You know what I mean? It just gets canceled instead of saying we table this and then wait to see what they're going to do. As far as we know, yes, you've got an email from them, but as far as we know, this is what's in front of us for now. Deal with it, and then if they want to change, they change.
So I can answer that question. The answer is no. Then it's your process. You've moved it forward. You're having a public participation meeting unless you have a council meeting before to cancel it. So
Okay.
If you pass this motion, it's in motion.
Okay.
Okay, solicitor, so structurally, how do we move forward with tabling this? We've got a mover and a seconder on the motion. So do we?
Do you have? I thought Mr. Smith jumped in.
No,
Not quick enough.
no. We haven't moved and seconded.
Can we get the agreement of the mover and seconder to table the matter for till the next council?
So
Councillor Huntley?
so it's a procedural motion. It could be a motion now to table it simply to the next meeting. Table a motion to the next meeting of council.
With concurrence of the mover and the seconder. Councillor Huntley, how do you feel about tabling this motion? Are you okay? Councillor Gerard, is that satisfactory that we table this motion?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that council table the motion to conduct a public participation meeting. Is there any further discussion on this? Are you ready for the question? The question is for council to table the motion to conduct a public participation meeting. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. All right, Councillor Huntley, back to you.
Thank you. The next is the review of intermunicipal service agreements. And at the January 11th, 2021 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Smith reviewed his report, which outlines the existing shares services for regional municipalities in the Valley. Regional municipal partners have renewed their commitment to be more consistent shared service agreements in this revised Memorandum of Understanding document. CAC recommend that Council approve the attached Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, with our local municipal governments outlining the organization of work programs for a joint review of intermunicipal service agreements, and further authorize the MOU with the signatures of the mayor and CAO. So moved.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder to that, please. Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the attached Memorandum of Understanding with our local municipal governments outlining the organization and work programs for a joint review of intermunicipal service agreements, and further authorize the MOU with the signatures of the mayor and chief administrative officer. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just very briefly, my knowledge of the IMSAs for Valley Waste and even the fire department, King's Transit and stuff like that, I'm not going to say it's in a mess. It was let to get in a mess on a lot of. So this is one thing. Look at the state of the sewer between the county and the town. So this is one thing that is of utmost importance. And if nothing else we do over the next 4 years, probably this will be some of the most important stuff that we do, making sure that, number one, that the taxpayers get a fair shake when it comes to, dealing with these IMSAs, but making sure that they are absolutely done right. That would be my only comment on this. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And I think, Councillor, we will see this occur. Our CEOs have been meeting and they have been very diligent about this. And going forward, there will be a committee put together. And so our work on this is not finished. And as you say, it's not to use the term future-proof us, but these are going to be documents that are going to be able to take us into the future. So it's a very good move. Is there anything further on this matter? All right. Are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the attached Memorandum of Understanding with our local municipal governments outlining the organization and work programs for a joint review of intermunicipal service agreements, and further authorize the MOU with the signatures of the mayor and the chief administrative officer. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried.
The next one we will talk about is the Kentville Historical Society lease extension. At the January 11th, 2021 meeting of the CAC, council met in camera to discuss a request to extend the lease agreement between the town of Kentville and the Kentville Historical Society. After this in-camera session, council made the following motion in the public session. Council Advisory Committee recommend that council extend the current lease with the Kentville Historical Society for an additional 5 years, ending on December 31st, 2025, at the existing annual lease of $1,500 plus HST, and further release the report publicly. So
Thank
moved.
you.
You're welcome.
Seconder for that, please. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council extend the current lease with the Kentville Historical Society for an additional 5 years, ending on December 31st, 2025, at the existing annual lease of $1,500 plus HST, and further release the report publicly. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council extend the current lease with the Kentville Historical Society for an additional 5 years, ending on December 31st, 2025, at the existing annual lease of $1,500 plus HST, and further release the report publicly. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell?
Yes.
Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. All right, Councillor Huntley, that wasn't too painful. Well done. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to our councillor and mayor's reports, and just give us the highlights. Councillor Gerard, please.
Thank you, Worship. So highlights, December 7th, NSAPG, the 8th CAO interviews, joint meeting. So Valley Waste, that is going to be an interesting one. I've had a lot of comments from people on Valley or that go to Valley Waste that go up there about the state of it. The state is 180 turned around. They have the previous gentleman that ran the operations. Now they're part-time while they look for a new one. So anybody that has asked me that's all fixed. We did a tour of that. And then I think most of you were present. Haley Crichton did the DOJ presentation on the roles and responsibilities of the police board. We haven't had another fire meeting. We have another police commission meeting this Friday. You all got the memo from Brian this week that states that the DOJ is going to look at policing in Nova Scotia, which I'm optimistic, but it could be I don't know. Who knows what they're going to find? But anyways, we will see. We're going to talk about that on Friday. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you, Your Worship. From December 8th up to the 23rd, it was all about CAO selection meetings and a council meeting. January 4th, we had our King's Transit first gathering, election of chair and vice chair, booking for board orientation. It was a short meeting. Same day, there was a diversity meeting. It talked about action plan updates, training, setting new meeting times, and we had a guest speaker for over an hour. Viola Robinson spoke on Mi'kmaq, people, topics of interest. It was a fabulous learning. And then Valley Wren, I've become a member of the Connector program. So following our mandate of relationship building and mentorship with local businesses. And I've got my first connect today, so that was exciting, yeah. Just for Kentville events, Kentville Lions Breakfast, we gathered, and the town sing-along. So I got to practice my old vocal cords, so that was nice. Had a Diversity Kings meeting. Again, it was introduction to members, discussion on the diversity action plan, which is moving forward. Talking about a name for the plan was discussed, and just booked the next meeting. And under miscellaneous events, just keeping steady, a senior safety discussion with Michelle Parker at the Wolfville Police Station, NSFM AGM voting on election of caucus, future of farming, which was a virtual at Dalhousie, which was very interesting. Police committee, I was there for the board responsibilities and roles reviewed. Meeting with police chief Julia Cicchetto on senior safety and fidget blanket donation for them. AVCC quarterly update, REMO meeting on review on emergency measures. And December 18th, there was a joint council workshop. And then the next 4 dates, there was virtual Indigenous series with Acadia and Glooscap First Nations on different sessions, which were absolutely fabulous. Meeting with Director of Parks and Rec on accessibility plan ideas on January 11th. I had a meeting with the Economic Development Coordinator and also a meeting with Communications January 20th. There was a webinar that I participated in for the Quality of Life Seminar offered by Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, which was wow. And the King's Transit Board meeting orientation was booked, but we had to cancel it due to weather. But on that note, I held a separate meeting with the interim manager, Rick Ramsey, just to find out some learnings about King's Transit and what they're about. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. First of all, I want to apologize to my council colleagues for being late at getting my report in. I know that from previous councils, that is a bone of contention, and I'm sorry I didn't have it in on time. However, in my defense, I have been doing feedings with my mom at lunch and supper from Sunday through to Wednesday. And then the other days it's once a week. And by the time I get home at 8 o'clock at night and have my supper, I'm exhausted. And it just slipped my mind this time, but I will do better. All right, so I have attended all the meetings, council meetings and so on. I've listed them from December 9th straight through to the 16th. I even had a tutorial session with our computer technology technicians and learned how to access my documents for Zoom on my computer at the same time we're having our meeting. So I'm, as they say, saving trees. And so I did do that. I will give you the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition meeting I attended to. I'll go through that one for you. That was on December the 9th. The meeting highlights here. Let's see, I'll go to the work plans for 21-22 were reviewed. Rick was designated our accessibility director. The Western Loop has been approved. And let me see, there was some discussion on the Vision New Minas plan, which is their long range plan, and the role that the Harvest Moon Trail has in their plan. The Friends of the Ravine did a presentation and indicated that their vision is to have the Harvest Moon Trail, have the Ravine Trail become part of the Harvest Moon Trail. And they were very keen on this. It would draw much more tourism into our town and so on. And they were also presenting to the New Minas group on this area as well, this vision, and to raise some awareness. The coalition finances are doing well so far, so everything was looking good there. As far as new projects, there are lots of projects being looked at, and the mostly looked at to how do we connect access to schools, local businesses in the various communities, all using the Harvest Moon Trail and having it a part of a province-wide active transportation plan and part of accessibility plan. There were no policy changes, and everything is running smoothly with the Trails Coalition. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Your worship. Mid-December was Investment Advisory Council, where we reviewed the reports and recommendations. Portfolios of north of 14 million, and our year-to-date return on that was 3.97. We continued discussions around the investment policy statement, which I will be presenting tonight. Certainly in light of COVID, it has encouraged us to pivot with that statement. So I'll present that a little bit later tonight. Again, mid-December was joint Fire Service Commission, which Councillor Gerard has reported on. I nominated him as chair, and he nominated me as vice chair. So we're in good hands on that committee, I think. We talked a little bit around the 1987 agreement with Aldershot and around some funds that were collected after a considerable amount of time. And there was a lapse, so we're having some discussions on how those funds will be allocated. And I'm sure Chair Gerard will discuss that later on. An in-camera meeting, some CAO recruitment discussions. Regional sewer was mid-January. We had reports on capital and operations. There is a possible shortfall in the county operating budget that may need to be shared between the partners. Our portion, of course, would be in that 51% mark. The deficit would be somewhere in the vicinity of 30,000, which we would share with our partners. Director Kroll has been advised accordingly. January 18th was Remo. We did an IMSA review process, and Mayor Snow was elected chair, and reports from Dan Stovall. I think I'm on the right meeting. Had a meeting with Mayor Snow on December the 18th where we discussed the previous strategic plan, and we did some delving into the proposed IMSA revisions. November 2nd was NSF MAGM and town caucus meetings where Mayor Snow was elected to the town caucus committee. Police Commission, as Chair Gerard mentioned, the DOJ presentation, and REMO Joint Council. The only other thing I wanted to mention was their IAC meeting, Investment Advisory Council, on January the 13th, where all the asset classes are pushing forward. Low interest rates and fiscal stimulus, we talked about that. We incorporated green politics, the green plan from US politics into that. And the intent is to shift slowly into the new IPS should same be approved tonight. And we are still north of 14 million. And as of mid-January, we were at a 4.47 current rate of return, which fits nicely against our time-weighted benchmark. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor York.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to sort of touch on everything that everybody has reiterated. The York last name means I go pretty late in the run here. But I will just reiterate, as Councillor Gerard said, that the Police Commission meets this week, so that'll be an update in my next council report. And the ABRL board is meeting again in February, so I haven't a report there either. However, the KCA PTA has met earlier this week, and last week, and they're doing wonderful things, which is not surprising. They've been fundraising up a storm with $450 coming in from a trivia event, though a KCA family didn't win the night, it was still a good boon for our coffers there. They sold $1,700 worth of wreaths in the past fundraiser and $480 worth of honey, which is wonderful. They are planning a meat box fundraiser coming up in the spring. So in conjunction with Meadowbrook Meat Market, will be selling some boxes there for a fundraiser. We welcome back Julia Stevenson, who's come back from her maternity leave and is joining us from the town of Kentville, which is exciting. And as for a cafeteria, we are up to about 900 meals a week now being served out of our cafeteria, which is absolutely incredible, from something that grew from about 5 meals a week when it was run outside of the PTA to about 100 meals a week when it was sort of in its early stages last year to about 900 this as of last week. So it's a big change there, and a lot of exciting things on the horizon for them. We also have music classes have been, the COVID guidelines around music have changed slightly to allow for singing. However, the other guidelines that are previously in place, like spacing and making sure that there's enough room to give a social distance around students, hasn't really changed at KCA. So we don't have enough space there to allow students to sing, but it hasn't stopped the creativity of the teaching staff there. So they've been doing a lot of music related things and have been hitting new curriculum outcomes that they might not have been able to otherwise because of their creativity and their ability to think outside the box there, which is wonderful. So while there have been some changes that have allowed for more flexibility within the curriculum, there are still some existing guidelines that prevent some of those things from happening, but it hasn't slowed our students down or the teaching staff at KCA. Again, the council stuff and the CAC stuff has all been as previously reported, and I'm looking forward to Police Commission on Thursday with Councillor Gerard, or Friday rather, with Councillor Gerard.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Your Worship. So December started off busy on the 3rd with CAO selection, which happened to be my birthday, so you're welcome. Spent my birthday doing that. That was a busy month, and on the 9th, we met with the Investment Advisory Committee, discussed the policy revision, which Deputy Mayor Savage will speak on that shortly. And there was a special council meeting on the 22nd, as well as the joint council meeting on the 18th of December. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for that. You have my report attached. A couple of what I consider highlights in this report is first of all, the president of Acadia University actually presented to the Kings County mayors, and talking about what Acadia is doing and their new strategic plan, and how they welcome their students. And one of the things, I guess, the biggest theme of their new plan is that concept of place. And I think that as residents of the Annapolis Valley, that this is something that is very near and dear to our hearts, is this place. And what they find is that their students come from all over the world, and a lot of young people from the US. And they all come here, and it becomes very much a home for them. And so place is very important. The other thing is, as Kings County councils, we have met on a joint council meeting talking about our intermunicipal service agreements, which is absolutely huge. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes. Asset management, it continues to be one of those things. We finished the cohort. It was an excellent training opportunity. I'm going to say to all members of council that if you get an opportunity to do asset management training, please take advantage of it. It's very, very interesting. And not to do any bragging, but I love bragging about Kentville, and attached is a newsletter from the Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network, and in it is the interview that I did with them with regards to asset management and the town of Kentville. So anytime anybody opens a little door and gives me the opportunity to brag, I'm in there like a dirty shirt. So I'm just going to tell you that. Quality of life continues to be one of those things that the report, you may recall that we did a survey in 2019, and the information that came out of it just keeps being more and more relevant, and in the ways that we use it. Included in your package is something called From Me to You, the Toolkit. For anybody who gets the weekend newspaper, on Saturday, there was a full page ad on how this From Me to You works. And basically it's a letter writing campaign. January is still pretty dark. People have been locked up, so to speak, for quite a while. And not that we've had a hard winter yet, but, people tend to start to hibernate after Christmas. So this is a way that you can reach out to your neighbors, write a note and, leave it on their front step. And maybe they write you back, or maybe they take advantage and do something themselves. Now, there is a toolkit available through Engage Nova Scotia, and I'm sure that the town of Kentville will be featuring it on our social media streams. But it's a really great initiative. So leave a note for your next door neighbor. Maybe they'd appreciate it, and make it a nice note. No crabby stuff. So Kings Remo, I am the chair of Kings Remo, and our deputy mayor is the vice chair of Kings Remo this year. On the 12th of December, I got to serve breakfast over at the Lions Club. Always love going over there. It's a great opportunity, and it gave me the opportunity to talk to our MLA John Lohr and to our MP Cody Blois, which I'm going to tell you is always another great opportunity to brag about Kentville. So notice there's a theme here, the bragging part.
Brag.
I still put down conferences because when I get on an AGM with somebody other than Town of Kentville, I like to kind of highlight it. So we did have the AGM or the annual general meeting for the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. And it was short and sweet, and we got down to business. There's still business to do, and the business keeps coming, and we will keep holding the fort down on that one. Valley Waste Orientation, wow, what a day. I never knew that garbage was as interesting as what it is, or how much crap people throw out, because I'm going to tell you that was some pretty interesting piles. And the other thing I'm going to say is that there are jobs available in the garbage business. And they're good jobs. They're good paying jobs. They come with pensions. Not that I'm getting paid to brag about this either, but I just want you to know that there are jobs in the garbage business if you've ever thought of doing that. The GM out there right now has a forestry degree. So keep that in mind. Very good paying jobs and room for promotion. Otherwise, I know the other great thing that I did last week. I got to attend a grade 9 NECEC citizenship class to talk about municipal government. It was excellent. I mean, done on Zoom, but it was still really, really a good opportunity. Again, one of those opportunities, if you get the chance, do it. And that's my report. So now that we have all the reports in, I would accept a motion, or I would take a motion to accept the councillor and mayor's reports as presented. Deputy Mayor and a seconder. Councillor York, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council and mayor's reports be accepted as presented. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to new business and talk about bragging. I'll do the bragging after you talk. So we have Director Bedingfield here this evening. She has provided you with a report and an update on Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant application. And I am just going to leave it there and let her dazzle you with what has been going on. Not to set you up or anything, but.
Mayor Snow, would it be
Yes?
possible to take a little pause here? I have to go to the washroom.
Okay. I was waiting till 8 o'clock, but no,
I'm not going to make
that's
it
okay.
too late.
We can take a break here, and again, if you could be back in 10 minutes, and
Less
then
than
Rachel
that.
can dazzle us. Jason, can you pause us on Facebook, or is that possible? Can you mute all, please? All right, we're all back. Oh, Rachel's not back. Oh, Director Bedingfield, you're back.
Sorry, I forgot to turn on my camera.
All right, the floor is yours.
That was quite the introduction. If I'd had sparkle, I would have put it all over me. A little bit of something. Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to bring this to you. It's been months and months and months in the making, and finally I have permission to be able to talk about it. So I did submit my report, and I just want to highlight on a few things. I don't think I need to read it verbatim unless there is a request to do that. The origin of this opportunity came from the ICIP, or the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, from the Government of Canada, that made the decision to infuse $33 billion in funding in bilateral agreements between the federal government, the provinces, territories, and the municipal government. We were actually contacted, the town of Kentville was contacted because of our already completed active transportation plan as someone that the province was interested in moving us through this funding. So we've been working on this for quite some time to see if we would be selected to get to the next stage, and we have, and this is why I'm here today. So the background for those of you who are new to council this year, the active transportation plan was approved in principle at the June 10th, 2019 council advisory meeting. And that motion said that council accepts the Kentville Moves active transportation plan and approve in principle the projects contained within. And further, council and staff commit to a detailed review of the strategy and the implementation of policy projects. That review happened, and staff were instructed to move forward on it, and thus here I am in front of you. Under the green infrastructure stream, and I do have to say this is a bit of a perfect storm in terms of funding. So there's emphasis on green infrastructure and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. There's an increase demand for active transportation and active transportation opportunities. And then there's also this COVID funding that's looking at the more we get people outdoors, the healthier our communities are. So the streams that it looks at are climate change and mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and disaster mitigation, and environmental quality. Ours was, of course, under improved access to clean energy transportation. So there are two phases to this grant process, as I said before, the first being provincial, the second is federal. So the province has essentially selected communities that they have now approved from their initial application and vetting stages to say to the federal government, these are projects that we think will be successful. They're in a state of readiness, and as a province of Nova Scotia, we're moving them forward to represent us. The opportunity offers for us to complete our entire active transportation grid, so the plan in its entirety, which totals $3,539,000, and it would be a cost-sharing piece between the federal government, the provincial government, and the town of Kentville. As we move on to the next phase, so the federal phase, one of the requirements is that there is a motion of support from council for a multi-year funding in principle, and then a pre-approval for this coming year, 2021-2022. So you can see there, the budget breakdown is federal is 40%, provincial is 33.33%, and town of Kentville in this case is 26.67%. So in the, excuse me, in the breakdown of the budget, you can see the breakdown of each of the funding pieces. So for this year, the budget that I'm asking you to pre-approve the entire projects to be done this year total $175,000. The town of Kentville, I'm asking for a pre-approval of $46,672. And this would be moving forward on the attachment to this document, which outlines the various, I think there are 10 projects that we would be able to complete just with that money alone. The big expenditures you can see are year 2, 3, and 4 out of the 7-year project. And you can see the town of Kentville contribution to each of those. It's a really great opportunity for us to complete essentially the active transportation plan and the grid itself. So what we know, what the data tells us is that doing piecemeal approaches to active transportation infrastructure doesn't provide very strong results in terms of changing the culture and changing the health of a community. But by coming in and completing an entire grid that allows people to get completed A to B, to workshop, play, recreate, all of these different things in their community, that's when the data is really strong and says, this is how you're going to change the well-being of your community. And the last piece I'm going to add to this, the benefit, is that we're able to cover a lot of what you'll see coming out of the accessibility plan this year, especially when it comes to the downtown core. So the majority of the funding, in fact, all $3 million in year 2 and 3 and 4, are going to be focused on the downtown to update the sidewalks, crossings, accessible crossings, and a multi-use bike lane going through the downtown. But this motion is asking for pre-approval of this year, and then the remaining years in principle. So under my recommendation, given that to continue with the grant process to secure funding through the ICIP program, that a motion of council confirming funding support for the 2021-22 fiscal year and support for subsequent years to be confirmed in principle is a requirement. And given that, if successful, the town of Kentville will receive a total of $2,595,100. I can't even see the number, it's so big. $2,595,149 in grant dollars to put towards completion of the town's active transportation grid. So I recommend the following: that council approve in principle the funding for the multi-year ICIP green infrastructure project, expected to expend $943,851 over 7 years, which is the town of Kentville's share of the multi-governmental funding agreement, for which the province of Nova Scotia is contributing $1,179,550, and the federal government is contributing $1,430,600. And further, that capital expenditures for this active transportation project for the 2021-2022 fiscal year, totaling $170,000, $46,672 of which is the responsibility of the town of Kentville, be pre-approved ahead of the 21-22 capital budget process, so that the completed application may be submitted to the ICIP program.
Thank you, Director Bedingfield. So we have a recommendation, and from there a motion that council approve in principle the funding of the multi-year ICIP green infrastructure project, expected to expend $943,851 over a 7-year period, which is the town of Kentville's share of the multi-governmental funding agreement for the province of Nova Scotia is contributing $1,179,550, and the federal government is contributing $1,430,600, and further that council pre-approve $46,672 line item in the 2021-2022 capital budget for this AT project, Kentville's share of the $175,000 first-year grant in support of the ICIP program. If somebody could move that, please. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor York, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that council approve in principle the funding for the multi-year ICIP green infrastructure project expected to expend $943,851 over 7-year period, which is the town of Kentville's share of the multi-governmental funding agreement for the province of Nova Scotia is contributing $1,179,550, and the federal government is contributing $1,430,600, and further that council pre-approve $46,672 line item in the 2021-2022 capital budget for this AT project, Kentville's share of the $175,000 first-year grant in support of the ICIP program. Discussion. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. 2 questions, actually. Number one, Director Bedingfield, of the 3.5 million, is that fixing any of our current sidewalks and infrastructure that are a lot of several kilometers of it is in a state of disrepair and not very user friendly, especially if you take an alternate way to be mobile?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, the short answer is yes. The long answer is part of the application is you actually have to go through and give a percentage of how much will be new builds, how much is repair, and then they rate you on all of that. The majority of our downtown is repair of the sidewalks that you're talking about. So it's Webster Street. What we did this summer is a good example of that. To get out.
Do you know the percentages? What's new and what's old, or what's going to be repaired?
I don't off the top of my head. I'd have to look through the actual proposal. But in the downtown, there's off the top of my head, there's no new sidewalks that are being built. It's all repair.
Okay. And the other thing, a lot of these, this is an old town, so a lot of these streets are very narrow. And I'm not saying that it can't be done. I'm just curious as to putting a bike lane on some of these narrow streets. Is that a concern at all, that that it's going to cause accidents or be bad for drivers and or cyclers?
So we can't do anything that doesn't meet code, obviously. So there is a certain distance that the bike lane has to take up and a certain distance that the road has to take up. You'll see if you read through the active transportation plan, there's lots of different designs. So obviously the most ideal and the one that the federal government is most interested in is the completely separate bike lane. We have a few options in those in our active transportation plan, but the majority are going to be signed bike routes. And when there's a wider shoulder, there'll be a sign that says this is a bike lane. And when there's not a wide enough shoulder, then it's going to be a shared the road sign.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Your Worship. Thanks, Director Bedingfield. Just wondering, maybe I missed it somewhere, but are there detailed plans of all these projects each year? What exactly you're doing? I kind of myself, I know it's a sell-through, but I'd kind of like to see what exactly you have planned, like in year 2022, 2023, etc., rather than just see a dollar amount. Kind of like to know what we're getting out of it.
Yep. So the attachment that I submitted has a brief overview of what we're proposing this year. Everything is taken from the active transportation plan. So it's everything is in there. I've literally submitted the active transportation plan. I've just broken it down in years based on funding allotment and what projects make sense to go together. I should also note too that every year I need to come back and report to council and present to council, these are the projects that we are proposing for this year. So, but just to give you a bit more detail on the projects that I'm proposing for this year and asking for pre-approval, I've already reviewed with the Director of Engineering and Public Works. There's a lot there that is simply signage on the road and other components that are like painting lines where there's a wide enough shoulder and putting in a bike lane.
But for this year, from what I'm reading, it's just signage and paint for 100. The total cost is 175,000 for those 10 little projects. That's what it looks. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, the largest one is the improved Harvest Moon Trailway Road crossing on West Main Street. So right around where the Altamart is, and that one is $40,000 in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And-
next year or the year after, hypothetically, if you're going to come back and say, well, we're going to spend $266,000 from the town of Kentville to put whatever, but just give something, maybe give you an example. Hypothetically, you're going to put a bike lane on Main Street. You're going to take a lane of traffic out. You're still going to come back and present. So you can pretty much use that money where you see fit, as long as it's within the guidelines of, and with our approval.
Yeah. Oh, you mean in terms of what so all of the projects in the active transportation plan
Right.
have been approved at the hopefully at the federal and provincial level. I still need pre-approval from this council every year before it can move forward on a project. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it? Councillor Maxwell. You're on mute.
Thank you, Director Bedingfield. This is an amazing grant, and it shows the dedication that the federal and provincial government are making towards active transportation and how important it is to them. And I'm just tickled pink that our students will be able to access the school safely from anywhere in town now, and that anybody who doesn't live on the western side of town can now access Memorial Park, or will be able to access Memorial Park safely. And that I know that a lot of these routes will also be totally accessible to wheelchairs and scooters. And so it is amazing that our whole town is going to be totally accessible to anybody, whether they're able-bodied or non. That this is just amazing, and to get that type of funding is kudos to you. I mean, that is an absolutely awesome amount of money. $2,595,149. And we're only looking, at a small amount. So, I mean, compared to that, the citizens of this town are going to be, I can't imagine anybody not being excited about that. So I just want to tell you and thank you. I think that's just incredible. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councillor Zabian?
I just had one more question for Director Bedingfield. So when you have Main Street bike lane paved shoulders, that's not in the downtown core.
Yeah, the Main Street bike lane. Yeah, it's a signed route, right?
Okay. So how does that affect? I'm just wondering.
Just means
I guess it might have been nice to see if there was like maybe a little visual see, because you're going to take some of the road, obviously.
The Main Street bike lane
Yeah.
is, so again, all of these projects and their visual representation are in the active transportation plan. So you can take the detail of this and line it up with the detail in the active transportation plan, and it will give you even more. But this is really signage along Main Street here, and it's share the road signage.
Okay, that's only share the road then. There's no painting.
No, and if so when you're leaving town, you know how there's already like a line that's coming through. Yeah, that would, when it's wide enough, it will be, considered a bike lane. But again, nothing is going against traffic authority. Director Bell he's been working with us very hard on this grant, I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, for new councillors, the active transportation plan is available on our network drives, and you can have a look at it. The other thing that I want to add is when this plan first came to us, I think we were talking about 15 years to completion of the plan, and that we were planning to do small projects as we could. And this is absolutely amazing that this is happening, and you definitely are going to get sparkles for it. You know, we're throwing sparkly confetti at you as we speak, but this is absolutely wonderful. So when I say that I like bragging about Kentville, well, I just have one more thing to brag about. You know, maybe this could actually be some chest pounding, but it's really excellent, and I think it really shows what is happening in this town as far as the growth, the prosperity, the development, the accessibility to all. And you know, we're going to talk about accessibility further on in this meeting, but you know, I think what you are teaching us is that accessibility is about more than able and people who are unable bodies. That it's about everything. And Councillor Maxwell really hit the nail on the head when she talked about, you know, being able to get from point A to point B safely, and that. So it's absolutely wonderful. Councillor Maxwell, I see your hand up.
I did have one question though. And I know that, you know, someone may be listening for this. The outer parts of Chester Avenue that right now there's no sidewalk there. Is there a plan to get those residents into town safely? So it goes beyond the part beyond the sidewalk over the next 7 years. Would something be in there for that?
I think within the AT plan, there's two pieces. There's, and this is Director Bell, but you know, he's not here, so I'll just speak for him. So there is, from that multi-use sidewalk there,
Yes.
going to be signage and a line painted to make sure that everybody's clear as to how to use that piece of infrastructure. And then beyond that, there will be, I believe, painted lines and signage. I'm not sure what is in the long-term planning for Public Works in terms of whether or not there's sidewalk development there, but that is what we're following within the AT plan.
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, that's good. Thank you.
I apologize, I don't have more information.
No, that's okay. Just as long as those residents know they're going to get connected. So
They will be yeah, that's the intent. And then, you know, within the AT plan that's not talked about here is that there's also policy revisions and things. So as we move forward, AT is always one of those things on the docket. I do need to preface, and though I love getting accolades, there's a large team who's been working on this. I just happen to be the lead on it, but you know, Jennifer West, Director Bell, Kirsten Harris, like it's a huge team. It's a huge project. We had to figure out, Director Bell and Jen have been working on the greenhouse gas assessment. So figuring how many greenhouse gas emissions will take place as we do the projects, how much we'll save when the project is complete. You know, all of these calculations that I couldn't even tell you the formula. It's a big deal. So I appreciate all of the accolades, and I will absolutely pass that on.
yeah, definitely pass them on, because when we give them to you, we also mean everybody that works with you. So
yeah, it's great.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Just one more quick thing, Director Bedingfield. Councillor Maxwell was saying about how kids will be able to access the West End and all this. Are we talking about maybe cement between separating the driving lane from the bike lane, or are we still talking about painted lines?
So in this current year, it's for those pieces, it's just painted lines, and which will allow both NSCC students and Aldershot students to be able to access our town, which is kind of exciting. It's not ideal, but the way that the active transportation route have established is that it really tries to keep those type of additions on quieter streets, so that, you know, there is still it's still safe for kids to be able to access it. And then of course, along with all of this, there is this public education about sharing the road, about you know, slowing down when there are cyclists and arguably walkers and wheelers around as well. So that's encompassing all of these pieces. This is just the built environment.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is on approval in principle of the funding for a multi-year ICIP green infrastructure project expected to expend $943,851 over 7-year period, which the town of Kentville's share of the multi-governmental funding agreement for the province of Nova Scotia is contributing $1,179,550, and the federal government is contributing $1,430,600, and further that council pre-approve $46,672 line item in the 2021-2022 capital budget for this AT project, Kentville's share of the $175,000 first-year grant in support of the ICIP program. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell,
Yes.
Councillor York,
Yes.
Councillor Zabian.
Yes.
I say yes, the motion is carried. All right, our next piece of new business is our special perpetual investment policy revision, and I will hand this off to the Deputy Mayor, who is also chair of that committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. So as I alluded to in my report, we are proposing that we make some amendments to our IPS. So I will start with that. Revisions to the special perpetual reserve fund investment policy. Just to give you some background, the special perpetual fund is guided by policy statement G26, and it's overseen by an investment advisory committee comprised of council members, citizen appointees, and staff. The investment policy statement was first developed in 1999 by IAC members with input from the Department of Municipal Affairs and Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corp. Once complete, it was ratified by Town Council and approved by the Minister for Municipal Affairs for the province of Nova Scotia. The IPS provides guidelines and restrictions on what can and cannot be done in relation to market investments. More importantly, it reflects the goals of the funds and how they are to be achieved in a responsible manner. Over the natural course of time, markets evolve, and periodically the IPS must evolve with them, and now is certainly one of those times. The current IPS has placed significant emphasis on fixed income investments with an original goal of limiting equity market exposure. This was quite appropriate when interest rates were high enough to meet our goals. However, interest rates have declined considerably and are not likely to meaningfully increase for quite some time. Therefore, the Investment Advisory Committee is proposing amendments to the IPS to, number one, reduce the maximum amount of fixed income required, 2, provide for greater flexibility across stocks and bonds, and 3, encourage greater diversification in order to mitigate risk. It may be important to note that the goals for the Special Perpetual Fund Reserve are not changing, and they are ranked in order of importance. Preservation of capital, liquidity, and competitive return on investments. Attached to this memo is a draft of the suggested changes to the IPS, and items that are highlighted in red are to be removed, while items highlighted in yellow are the additions to the policy statement. The IAC met on December 9th, 2020 and reviewed these changes with the fund manager. At this meeting, a motion was carried by IAC members to present the changes to Town Council for its approval and ratification. Once approved by Council, the IPS must be forwarded to the Department of Municipal Affairs for ministerial consent. So the recommendation is, on behalf of the IAC, I bring forward a recommendation to Town Council that the revisions to policy number G26, Special Perpetual Reserve Fund Investment Policy, as attached, is ratified. Once approved by Town Council, the revision will be forwarded to the province for ministerial consent. I so move.
Thank you. If I could have a seconder on that, please. Thank you. Councillor York. It has been moved and seconded that Council approve the revisions to policy G26 Special Perpetual Reserve Fund Investment Policy. And further, once approved by Town Council, the revision will be forwarded to the province for ministerial consent. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Gerard.
Worship. Deputy Mayor Savage, do you anticipate these changes to be an increase in income or a decrease in losses, more stable, or a combination of both?
That's hard to say, but the idea is, in order so that we're making these changes, we will make these changes such that we can continue to have the income that we have now coming in for our operating budget. We wouldn't be making these changes, as I alluded to earlier, unless our interest rates were as low as they are, because a large component of our portfolio has been under the fixed income piece. And that just doesn't work anymore, not if we want to try and sustain the income that we get from this portfolio. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Snow, I think we take 430,000 out per annum and we allot for 470 should there be deficits in the budget.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are we ready for the question? The question is to approve the revisions to the policy G26 special perpetual reserve fund investment policy. And further, once approved by town council, the revision will be forwarded to the province for ministerial consent. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell? Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. All right. So our next piece of new business is a resolution on African Heritage Month. And I just want to mention that you've probably seen on our website and on our social media stream that tomorrow at 10 a.m. that there will be a launch of the African Heritage Month. So the resolution is, be it resolved that whereas February is recognized internationally as African Heritage Month, a time to recognize and salute the many contributions and ongoing achievements of people of African descent all over the world, and here in town of Kentville in the province of Nova Scotia, we celebrate a time of greater understanding. Whereas we are in the 7th year of the International Decade for People of African Descent. Whereas this year's theme, Black History Matters, Listen, Learn, Share, and Act, recognizes the important legacy of people of African descent and the long-standing history and development of Canada. This theme brings focus and increased awareness of racialized issues of a community that has overcome great adversity for inclusion in all aspects of society. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Sandra Snow, do hereby proclaim the month of February to be African Heritage Month. I encourage residents, businesses, and community groups to participate in the activities and celebrations and to take opportunity to reflect on the story of Nova Scotia's vibrant African Nova Scotian community. And the motion is that Council approve the resolution recognizing February as African Heritage Month in Kentville. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that Council approve the resolution recognizing February as African Heritage Month in Kentville. Discussion? There's no discussion. Are you ready for the question? The question is to approve the resolution recognizing February as African Heritage Month in Kentville. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell? Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. And there are events planned. It all depends on what happens this Friday when they make the announcement on maybe loosening up the COVID stuff. So we'll wait and see. The next resolution is with regards to the 2021 census. So be it resolved that the Town of Kentville Council supports the 2021 census and encourages all residents to complete their census questionnaire online at www.census.gc.ca. Accurate and complete census data supports programs and services that benefit our community. So the motion coming out of this is that council supports the 2021 census resolution in Kentville. Somebody could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And Councillor Gerard, I've got you for the second, please. It has been moved and seconded that council support the 2021 census resolution in Kentville. Is there any discussion on this matter? So part of the documentation that came out of the government is that there will be approximately 32,000 jobs created as part of this. So keep an eye on our social media stream and other announcements when they start looking for folks here in our area to do the census. Is there any further discussion? So if you're ready for the question is in support of the 2021 census resolution in Kentville. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell? Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. All right, we're coming down to the short strokes here. So our last piece of new business is a welcome to our Chief Administrative Officer. It's easier to say CAO, but I'm trying not to use too many acronyms. I tend to get picked up on it at least once a week. So welcome, Dan, to Kentville. We look forward to you in the office and taking care of business for us.
Thank you very much.
We have provided a short bio on you. If there's anything that you want to say, the floor is yours.
No, well, first, thank you. Day one in the office, great welcome by everyone. So truly appreciate it. And I want to thank the vote of confidence from the folks around, I was going to say the table, but the screen here tonight. And looking forward to getting down to getting some things done. So thank you for the warm welcome. And for those who I haven't had a chance to meet in person yet, I'm sure I will over the coming week. And the door is always open for anything that anyone ever wants to come in and have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's get down to business here. We have a motion that council appoint Dan Trolk as the Chief Administrative Officer and the Town Clerk of the Town of Kentville effective January 25th, 2021.
So moved.
Deputy Mayor, did I see your hand on that? And Councillor Gerard, I got you for the second. It's been moved and seconded that council appoint Dan Trolk as Chief Administrative Officer and Town Clerk of the Town of Kentville effective January 25th, 2021. Is there any discussion on this matter?
Your worship,
Oh, yes.
falls to the CAO to appoint the clerk. So as I recall, so I don't think that should be form part of the motion.
Okay, thank you.
Am I right about that? There's two other CAOs. I didn't specifically check, but that's my recollection. Does either of the CAOs at this meeting have something to say about that?
We had a discussion on it this afternoon and I incommended, so I can incommend again. It's neither here nor there. What is the wish?
Dan or Brian?
Yeah, it was me that had the discussion this afternoon, and I thought it would be good to have council appoint the clerk as well. But I am thinking in the Municipal Government Act, the positions below the CAO are appointed by the CAO. So I think you may be correct there. I apologize.
Well, I'm quickly checking the Municipal Government Act, so I can get right back to you as quickly as my fingers go.
The only recollection I have on this, Madam Mayor, is that my understanding is for a lot of documents for the provincial government, they interchange CAO and clerk for signing on those documents. But I think the comment made by CAO Smith is more than likely correct, because I believe the only employee is the CAO and all others are done under the CAO position. That's my recollection.
So to my mover and my seconder, do you have a problem with deleting this erroneous data?
Absolutely not.
All righty.
I bet a clerk would have known.
Ink amended.
Your worship, in the meantime, in spite of the expertise that are visible on the call, Jennifer looked it up and said that the CAO is by default the clerk unless he or she chooses someone else to be the clerk.
All right.
Jennifer, that confirms my recollection.
Okay, all good then. So is there any further discussion? So the amended motion reads, are you ready for the question? The question is on appointment of Dan Trolk as the Chief Administrative Officer of the Town of Kentville, effective January 25th, 2021. Deputy Mayor, how say you?
Yes.
Councillor Gerard?
Yes.
Councillor Huntley?
Yes.
Councillor Maxwell? Councillor York?
Yes.
Councillor Zabian?
Yes.
And I say yes, the motion is carried. Phew. All right, interim CAO, Brian, we have some correspondence if you wanted to chat about that.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to review them all very quickly. 3 of them, items A, B, and D, are from residents in the area of the Healy property, and we discussed the special events COVID bylaw this evening and defeated it. And that's really the request of each of those residents, so they should be pleased with the outcome this evening. The other piece is a chance to brag a little bit, I guess. The Department of Justice is responding to requests from municipalities across Nova Scotia for another year to develop their accessibility plan. But as you know, we've had an accessibility committee in place for a while now. We have an almost finished report on our accessibility action plan. So we're well ahead of schedule. But of course, we always appreciate a little extra time to get it done right and get it done well. And that's the other bit of correspondence from the Minister of Justice. That's it, Your Worship.
Excellent, thank you. Jennifer, do we have any public comments?
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move in camera. So the council has confidential property business, which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda items. We will not be returning to Facebook Live for the adjournment. If I could have a motion to go in camera, please. Councillor Zabian, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into a closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into a closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried and the time is 8:15. Thank you.